We're joined now by Jussie Smollett's attorney, Tina Glandian. Tina, good morning. It's good to see you. You're probably aware of this breaking news that the FBI and the Department of Justice are now looking into the circumstances of the dismissal of charges against your client. Does that concern you?
Not at all. I mean, we have nothing to be concerned about because there was nothing on our end to request this, to do anything improper, and to my knowledge, nothing improper was done.
Well, let's talk about it, because people look at this, they think this is a good deal for your client. Some people think it's a sweetheart deal, and it's a bit suspicious. So let's see if we can clear things up.
Sure.
To your knowledge, since February 20th, when Jussie Smollett was initially charged, did he, his family, friends, associates, did anyone reach out to anyone in the state's attorney's office on his behalf?
I can't speak to what other people did. I certainly don't know what all of those individuals did, but not to my knowledge, not at our direction. And I just don't think that had nothing to do with why prosecutors discussed dismissing the case.
You don't know of any contact by, say, friends in high places, as has been suggested?
No.
Do you know that Kim Foxx, the state's attorney who we just saw there, she recused herself.
Right.
Do you know of any contact that you, the lawyers, or anyone on Jussie Smollett's behalf had with Kim Foxx since she recused?
No.
There was no involvement, as far as you know, with Kim Foxx and the decision to dismiss these charges?
No, the discussions were strictly with the prosecutors who were actually handling the case.
Now, the prosecutor's office says that the charges were dropped in exchange for your client's agreement to forfeit $10,000 that he had paid in a bond and to do community service. Is that correct? Were those conditions on his dismissal of charges?
There were no conditions, and there was no obviously, there was no plea. There was no agreement in place. They did want him to forfeit the bond, and that's something that we discussed with him, and he initially struggled with because he didn't want the perception to be that he had done anything wrong. But at the end of the day, forfeiting $10,000 versus putting your life on hold for a year was a small cost to pay.
But to be clear, because the prosecutors are now trying to say, well, there were conditions. This wasn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. You're saying he chose to forfeit that bond essentially voluntarily.
Yeah, they had asked if he would do that, and we advised him that he should do that because it was going to cost him almost, multiples of that number to go to trial.
What about the community service aspect of it?
The community service is something we initially raised ourselves at the initial bond hearing, saying this is somebody who's volunteered hundreds of hours, thousands of hours since he was a teenager to all sorts of organizations. It's something he's always done. So in our discussions with the prosecution, we told them about his volunteer service. We did show them a few letters of his ongoing community service.
But was this a condition of the charges being released? He's got to do this community service.
He had to do nothing. There was no obligations, no conditions. These are things that he chose to do because that's his character. And again, you can find out from multiple sources that this is what he's done for years and years and years with multiple organizations.
Let's talk about some of the facts here.
Sure.
First of all, is it your position that he is, in fact, factually innocent?
Absolutely.
No
question.
He didn't stage his own hate crime? No?
No, absolutely not.
He didn't send a letter, a fake death threat letter to himself? Okay. It's undisputed, is it not, that whatever the motive, the Osundairo brothers, they are the attackers here, correct?
When you say it's undisputed, there's been more information leaked than we've actually received from the prosecution and discovery in this case, which is a little absurd, but that's the situation. We've never received any of the videos that have been referenced. So we've heard about videos and surveillance and things like that. We haven't seen it. So
I'm talking about Jussie Smollett on TV. He looked at that surveillance picture. It was shown the picture. He said, "Are those your attackers?" He said, yes. He knew that those were his attackers. Okay, and then we know that that picture was of the Osundairo brothers, correct?
Well, when you say we know that, we believe that at this point with the information we've been told. But again, a lot of the information that the police, the CPD has put out there and said is evidence has turned out not to be evidence. So we do have to question, again, he initially had a hard time believing because he was friendly with one of the brothers. He didn't really know the older one very well, but he was friendly with Abel. And so he had a hard time believing that his friend would be behind this.
What would the motive be? What would the motive for the brothers to be?
We would be speculating at this time, and I don't want to go on record right now and give my own theory of the case, but I do have a theory, but, it is speculation.
They didn't get money, right?
I'm sorry?
They didn't steal money from him.
They did not, no.
They didn't take a phone?
No.
Not a car?
No. There was no theft. It was nothing short of pretty much the brief interaction that you've heard of.
Was it just coincidence, or if you're the Osundairo brothers, luck, that they happened to run across him in his neighborhood at 2 a.m.?
Neither. So they knew he was going to be in his neighborhood at 2 a.m. So he had hired Abel, as we've said, for training and nutrition. They were in regular communication. Jussie was on his way back to Chicago from New York that night, and he was in constant communication with Abel via text and phone call because they were supposed to train that evening, and he was delayed for 4 hours.
He spoke to them about an hour, 15 minutes before this attack.
Correct.
Then he walks out of his apartment at 2 a.m., and lo and behold, there are these brothers waiting to attack him.
Right.
They knew he was... Did he tell them, I'll be leaving the house here at 2 a.m.?
So what happened is he spoke to Abel. They were supposed to train. He was delayed for 4 hours. And initially he told him, we'll still train when I get in. It's going to be a little late. When it turned out to be a 4-hour delay and he was getting in after midnight, he obviously told him, we're not going to train any longer. And they were supposed to still train in the morning, and they were scheduling that. And Abel said, make sure you eat, and he had given him a nutrition plan, and he had to eat eggs, 4 eggs or something.
What does that have to do with coming out of the house?
He said, I don't think I have any, but I'll run out and get some. And he was being picked up by somebody. So he made it clear that he was on his way. And, on that note, too, their story says that, they thought or that he allegedly planned the attack for 2 a.m. sharp. And according to the police, they arrived at 1:22 p.m. And it's freezing cold. And if you look at the timing, it's a 15-minute car ride. So why would you get there 40 minutes early if...
Well, some people are early birds.
Well, to wait in that cold weather, which Jussie got so much grief for, that he went out for a sandwich in the cold. But the brothers apparently waited in the cold for 40 minutes.
Well, if they were going to attack him, I guess they were they were looking for their opportunity.
Right, but I'm saying it makes much more sense if you look at it through that lens, that they were trying to catch him as soon as he got home, as opposed to if this was at 2 a.m., you got there 40 minutes early.
According to the court records, Smollett was very clear with police on the night of the attack that his attackers were white. He said they had masks on and gloves, but he saw their eyes and he saw the skin surrounding their eyes. Was that a false statement?
So just to be clear, he only saw one of the attackers. One of them he didn't see. He saw one through a ski mask. Again, he could not see their body. Everything was covered, and he had a full ski mask on except the area around the eyes. He did tell police that from what he saw, he thought it was pale skin or white or pale skin was, I think, what he said. And that was and that's why he initially did have a hard time.
Why did he say that? He could have said, I don't know.
He could have, but this, again, he's being truthful.
But if it's the Osundairo brothers, what are the chances that that's the case, that he saw somebody with light skin?
Well, I think obviously you can disguise that. You could put makeup on. There is actually, interestingly enough, a video. I think police did minimal investigation in this case. It took me all of 5 minutes to Google. I was looking up the brothers, and one of the first videos that showed up actually was one of the brothers in white face doing a Joker monologue with white makeup on. And so it's not implausible.
Couple quick things. He said that these individuals were yelling at him these homophobic and racist smears. Why didn't he recognize their voices? He had literally just hung up with one of them.
Sure. People say this as if this is a regular interaction. if you're walking in the street and somebody screams, you turn around, and before you can even process what they look like, you've been punched in the face, and now next thing you're on the floor and you're being kicked. This is not a regular, this is a very brief interaction, all of 30 to 45 seconds with your head being thrown around by punches. And so this isn't somebody who's digesting what's happening. This is, there's excitement and fear and all of these things happening. And so
finally, I want to just play you a portion of an interview that Jussie did recently and ask you about it.
I understand how difficult it will be to find them, but we gotta. I still want to believe, with everything that has happened, that there's something called justice.
If he is a victim of a crime, as he contends, will he urge prosecutors to bring charges against the Osundairo brothers, and will he be willing to testify?
I think in light of what he's been through the last 2 months, he really just, he's told me numerous times, I don't even care about what happened. I just want to move on. What's happened after the fact?
That makes sense, though. This is a terrible attack.
What that attack was pales in comparison to the attack on him by the mayor, by the CPD, by the press, by the public.
He would be vindicated if these two were exposed as liars in a court of law, would he not?
We would want that. But what he's been through after the fact has really been a much harsher attack than what he endured that night. This wasn't a very brutal attack. Obviously, it was frightening, and it's something he did not deserve. But they didn't beat him so badly that, he, at this point, again, has been victimized much more by what's happened afterwards than what happened that night.
Tina Glandian, thank you for spending time and answering questions. It's always appreciated.
My pleasure.